Good morning. It's so good to be here with you. And those of you out on Zoom, hi, how are you doing? I'm really glad that you're here today. And not only have we had a lot of drama this week, but we had a very dramatic snowstorm last night. So I'm very glad to be here and to have you join me. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about human rights. And we're going to talk about Black History Month. My name is Janis Daly. I am a lay minister. But when I use that term lay minister, what exactly does that mean anyways? I mean, what does it mean to you? Well, I'm going to start at the beginning. When I was 8 years old, my parents lived in Brooklyn, New York, and that was when my mother discovered Unitarianism. She was so enthused about it, oh my God. She was dragging us to church, dragging my dad, and I'll have to tell you, our response was lukewarm at best. My dad went a couple times. He said, I'm just your show and tell husband, you see, because they were an interracial couple in the 60s. And he felt he was a show and tell husband. And he said, oh, those Unitarians are phonies. And he never came back again. But I don't feel too bad because he didn't go to any church whatsoever. He never did. But I always knew that he had a conviction inside of him about something that he believed in. I went too, and I can hardly remember anything that happened, except for one experience where we had a Sunday school teacher who brought treats, chocolate treats, and encouraged us each to have one. Well, I took a little bite, and I heard this horrible crackling sound, and that was it for me. I threw it out. It turned out that she had brought exotic insects. Ooh. I can't imagine any Sunday school teacher doing something like that today. And then when she told everyone, they were all freaking out and saying, oh, I'm going to be sick. That has stood in my mind forever. The other thing that I really remember from that point in time was going to an island. We took a little cruise ship over to an island called Bear Island. That's B-E-A-R, not B-A-R-E. And do I remember the island? Not at all. What I remember was being on the ship with these Unitarian teenagers, and they had the transistor radio. Remember the transistor radio back in the 60s? And they were playing all the hits of the time, right? Imagine me and you, I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the one you love and hold them tight. So happy together. So that was the kind of thing that I remember, and I still love music from that era. But I also got a Bible, and it was a beautiful, gold embossed Bible. It had my full name written down. It's Janis Daly. That was the first time I saw anywhere where my name was spelled correctly. But they handed me a Bible. No one told me how to use it. I had no clue. I've lost that Bible. I have read the Bible since, but I read it with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but that's for another speech. So there we go. It was not otherwise a great experience for me as a child. I felt very uncomfortable, and really, my mom gave up trying to take us, but her enthusiasm never waned. In 1968, we ended up moving to Canada, and it was not under great circumstances. My parents were having a lot of difficulties in their marriage, and they had separated, and it was very, very hard. Grade 6, me coming from New York and New Jersey to Mississauga, Ontario, where the kids made fun of my clothes, my accent, the way I talked seemed to be a real problem, and they seemed to have an issue with my looks. But I didn't really stay away forever from Unitarianism, because as a teenager, for 1 year, I joined the Unitarian group LRY. That stood for Liberal Religious Youth. And this is back, somehow I ended up at Don Heights. I don't know how. I did, because it wasn't close to where I lived, but Don Heights on Antrim Crescent. I used to go there. And what was the great experiences there that I have? It was going to youth conferences. Yay, Montreal, hooray, Ottawa, hey, close by, Mississauga. And there's always one kid with a car, a really beat-up looking old jalopy. And everybody would pile into the car. And we'd be music on the radio, and we'd be singing, "Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, ba-ba, ba-ba-ba, baby." So we had a lot of fun. It was great. But once again, things would change. Before we did that, I had this thing about the United States, because I'd lived there when I was a kid. And then coming to Canada, somehow I thought, oh, Canada, not really all that special. It's not as good as the States. Really isn't. I was so ingrained with that thought in my mind that I didn't go to Unicamp. No, I went down to the Adirondack Mountains in New York and went to a camp called Unirondack. You know, it's kind of funny. This was the camp, though, where I met my first boyfriend, so maybe it was destiny. But I also got to know the camp minister. And what's funny about it is that I wrote to him afterwards for a year. A year. I already had this thing about ministers, but I didn't even realize that's what it was. I had no clue. I was clueless. So I started college, and Unitarianism once again faded away. In fact, I ended up joining another faith altogether called Eckankar, and we believed in the light and sound of God, that regardless of any religion that you belong to, everyone could use the mantra of Hugh. Have you heard of the mantra Hugh? Yep. Some people have, some haven't. So Hugh is a mantra that you would sing every day for 20 minutes. And it would just go like this. You can sing it with me if you want. Hugh. And they would sing it over and over for 20 minutes. And the largest group that I ever sang it with was 6,000 people. So you can imagine how powerful it would sound. The Hugh is considered a love song to God, and we would sing it with the intention of tuning in to the universe's frequency, like the FM radio. That's the way I always thought of it. Other people, of course, use Om or You or whatever. And we all think ours is the best, don't we? That use those things. So how on earth did I end up back at Don Heights? Well, my mother had Alzheimer's, and she lost her license. She lost her license because she was driving around with no insurance. And when I asked her about it, she said, "I've been paying for insurance for years. I don't know them a thing." Anyways, she got stopped by a police officer, and I'd actually already spoken to her doctor. So the police officer had said, "If you don't get this straightened out in a week, you won't be driving anymore." And at the same time, the letter from the Ministry of Transportation arrived telling her that she couldn't drive anymore. So she never figured out that I'd gone to the doctor and basically outed her. But I had to, because I was really worried about her. And thank goodness I did, because the car she was driving around, when the mechanic looked at it, said it was totally unfit for the road. So anything could have happened. But I had to make a deal with her. So I said, "Mom, I'll take you to Don Heights, alternate weeks, and I'll go to my church in between." And so she agreed to that. And she loved coming here. She loved coming here. Oh my goodness. Over time, with all the various topics that came up at Don Heights Unitarian, I found myself drawn more and more and more to this faith than the one that I actually supposedly belonged to. And at one point, somebody said, "What about social justice?" And for some reason, it really struck my heart. And I thought, yeah, what about it? What is my church doing about social justice? They were looking inward, but they weren't that interested in looking outward. And here, I like to think that we're trying to do both. At that point, I could no longer stay in Eckankar. And in 2011, I became a full-fledged Unitarian at Don Heights Unitarian, and as a prodigal daughter who had started out because this is the faith that I actually grew up in off and on, I was back for good. And while I was here, I sang with the choir. I got much better at playing electric bass. I did some volunteer writing. I did public speaking. And yes, I have done a lot of roles here, but there was always this other thing at the back of my head, calling. I couldn't even name it. I didn't know what it was. It took me so long to figure this out. I knew I wanted to be a minister. See, I even dressed for it today. But I couldn't see myself going back to school for years and years because unlike many people that go back, I do not have a bachelor's degree. And the thought of 6, 7 years of school just wasn't feasible. And then I found out, not in Canada, not from North America, but from the United Kingdom, they had a school for lay ministers. And we don't have one in North America. We do not have one in North America. I made inquiries and thought, what am I going to do? But then I found out that you could become a lay minister if your congregation agreed to it. I was already a lay chaplain, so I already do memorial services and weddings and that sort of thing. And I know that I'm not qualified to offer anybody any kind of counseling. So I set a boundary for myself, what I read from other lay ministers in the places that they were, and I had a couple of minister mentors. But what I'm really thankful for is Don Heights for believing in me and giving me this chance. It means a lot to me. But still, in spite of that, I didn't tell people I was a lay minister. No. I didn't bring up with my friends. I certainly didn't tell strangers. I still didn't feel like I was enough. I still didn't think I was adequate. But today, I can no longer do that because when Spirit speaks to you, you have to listen. And I have to listen. And what I hear is that I have a calling now that I'm going to go out beyond this congregation to other congregations to speak. And yes, I am wearing a robe today, and you might be thinking, well, that's kind of old school. What are you doing that for? And the reason I wanted to do it is because this robe has a lot of history associated with it. It's been around since 1965. It belonged to a very beloved member of Don Heights, Margot Holland, and she passed it on to Florence Ivany, and Florence passed it on to me when she moved out to Newfoundland. So if I think of it in terms of an ancestral thing, it gives me courage. It says, here I am, no hiding. This is who I am. I need that because today I'm going to talk about love. So I'm going to ask everyone to repeat something after me and just have a little bit of fun with it. I want you to say, where is the love?
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 You know, that came from a song. And it was a song written by Ralph MacDonald and William Salter. It was a huge hit for Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. They won a Grammy Award as a duet group in 1972. But I wonder if you know what the rest of the lyrics are about. Where is the love you said was mine, oh mine, till the end of time? Was that just a line? Where is the love? Well, guess what? It's a song about infidelity. But nonetheless, that was enough to start this journey for this speech for me, because often as people do talks, you need something that's going to set a tone or set inspiration for you, and you never know where that source is going to come from. So I was really glad that that came up. And I'm going to go back through some history. I'm going to go through some of the civil rights movement, and we're going to pull it all together. I wonder what everyone in this room was doing on the Monday of January the 20th of this year. I'll tell you what I didn't do. I certainly didn't watch that fiasco of the U.S. presidential inauguration on TV. Nope. I celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday instead and reread some of his books. And I thought about Black History Month. You know, Martin Luther King was a great admirer of Mohandas Gandhi and the nonviolent resistance movement, which freed India from British colonialization. And he took that idea and ran with it for the civil rights movement. But did you know it had a set of rules? One is that he felt that whatever you do must be compatible with the end results. In other words, you cannot use violence to get what you want and then become peaceful. I loved his statement, quote, "In the long run of history, immoral, destructive means cannot bring about moral and constructive ends." So the nonviolent movement can only operate from love. And he was very clear, it's not about like, because like is not passionate. Love is. And he talked about the internal and external aspects of love. He wanted to make sure that those people that went out in the 60s, as we remember, the luncheons, the sit-ins, people marching, they were all trained before they went out. And here was the things that he asked, and they were huge asks. It does not inflict injury on another. You cannot hit back or curse back. It can only operate from love. He explained this using the Greek words, and they have 3 words for love. Eros is beautiful, aesthetic love, romantic love, but Plato described it as the yearning of soul for the realm of the divine. Philia is another word for love, and it's talking about reciprocal love, the love that you have with your friends, with your family. You are loved, therefore you love. Agape love is understanding, creating redemptive goodwill to all, and it loves without seeking anything in return. But this is not a passive love. To go on a march, and we remember from watching our TVs, people just marching arm to arm and being set upon by dogs, water hoses, beatings, that impression that went out all across the world. That's not passive. That takes a lot of strength, tremendous amount of strength. But we see, even today, human rights are not given freely. They have to be stood up against. And the horror of what was going on at that time made the U.S. a pariah in the world, but eventually what followed the civil rights movement was the women's movement, the LGBTQ movement, all human rights issues. So we cannot cooperate with evil. And as he said, it's our moral obligation to cooperate with good. Where laws are unjust, we must oppose them and speak out. We all remember, oh no, I should never say that. If you don't remember, have a look at it online on YouTube, the I Have a Dream speech, where he wanted to see a world of harmony and goodwill and friendship for all humanity. This is truly what a love of humanity would look like. I have to tell you, I had the pleasure of meeting Yolanda Denise King years ago. I bought the CD off her. I was at a women's conference, right? And the funny thing about it is this has been sitting on my shelf for 20 years, and this is the first week I ever listened to it. And she wrote to Janis, "Blessings, Yolanda." She was Martin Luther King's oldest daughter. She was beautiful. She was tall. She was an amazing speaker. But she died young. She died in 2007. And she carried on the legacy of her father's dream. I like the way she described herself. She says, "I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, all-caps dreamer." But she worried, as time was going by, that the dream was not being fulfilled. And she talked about love as well. And what she shared was this: each of us must start with having self-love. We can't love the world if we can't love ourselves. And she admitted that she had struggled with that. Have you struggled with that? I know I have. When we love ourselves, we strengthen our personal power because all we need is already in us. It's in our hearts. It's in us. We are made, as she described it, in the image of God, maybe universe for you, creator for other people, or whatever you call your higher power. And we are made with unconditional love that we can give to ourselves and to others. And we must see our mistakes as lessons, not personal indictments. We are not alone. And as we examine ourselves honestly, we can reach out. We have a community to help us. She suggested that you embrace your power and ask in prayer with supportive people, with your thoughts on the good and all that is divine, what your purpose is. But we have a choice, and it's our choice to make. Do we want chaos or community? And I was very surprised to realize that Martin Luther King and Yolanda King used language that's very common in Unitarianism, which is beloved community. What a wonderful statement, beloved community. We have a choice in what we believe, so why not light up the world? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And that's what we all are. We are the light to the world, ourselves. And believe it or not, there is now another Yolanda King. This is the granddaughter. She was named after her Aunt Yolanda. And this young lady has already written a book and spoken at the United Nations. So probably we will see more of her in the future as well. But let's leave the States for a while and come back to Canada, because a couple of weeks ago, January 28th, Don Heights Singers went to the East York Historical Society, and their guest of honor was the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine. She came to Canada in 1960, and she worked as a nanny, a teacher, a principal, chair of the Metro Toronto Housing Committee, and in 1993, she became the first Black woman ever elected to Parliament. And she was re-elected 4 times before she decided to put her attention on other and new challenges. And while she has many, many honors, her big successes were making the motion for Black History Month in Canada. And she talked about that struggle. And she went to every single person individually, caught them in hallways, coming out of the bathroom, coming out of meetings, and spoke to them about Black History Month. Everywhere she could find them. And her motion passed unanimously. She also pointed out Black history is Canadian history. A lot of us don't even know that the first Black person to come to Canada was Matthew DaCosta. He arrived in Canada in 1604, and he was a multilingual interpreter who helped connect the European colonizers with the Mi'kmaq people. How many people here knew that? 1, 2 people. So that's wonderful. I mean, I just was so glad to be there and hear her talk. It really made my week. And she was so gracious, you know, that we, as a choir, she offered to take a picture with the whole choir. So we'll be posting that probably soon on our Facebook page, maybe on our website. What do you think? We should, because it was wonderful to have her there. And we know there are other incidences. We look at 1946, Nova Scotian, Viola Desmond, who refused to sit somewhere else. She was in the whites-only section of a movie theater, and they arrested her and threw her in jail for that. She knew it was unjust, and we know it was unjust. But it took till 2018 for there to be a public apology, and then she became the first Black person on the $10 bill. So see, you can hide history. You can hide the truth, but eventually, as Gloria would always say, the truth always comes up to the surface, eventually. It's amazing, right? And we ourselves can look back at July 9th, 2022, at the government's public apology in Truro, Nova Scotia, to the number 2 Black Construction Battalion that was operating during World War I, that our very own Sheila White was extremely active in. We were able to watch history on TV live right from this very room. These are only a few moments. Black history is Canadian history. Indigenous history is Canadian history. There's a lot of things, so many things that are part of our history. But we have to come back from this history and look forward to the present day. And we know that to right any of these injustices takes a lot of passion, a lot of work. Who would do this if it wasn't an act of devoted love? Would you do it because you like it? It's hard work. It's not easy. As we look at the current events and the disarray our American friends are in, we see a threat looming. Mr. Trump's interest to build an American empire, annex Canada to his will. But the Canadian approach has been a study in nonviolent resistance. We're looking at our purchasing power. We're looking at the actions that each citizen can make, right? And let's see this. This truly represents all 3 of those types of love, eros, phileo, and agape love. Our love for ourselves, our love for our friends and family, and our love for our country. The difficulty that the Americans find themselves at this point is that the United States has been divided into us versus them and filled with bigotry, hatred, and negativity at the core of the messaging that they're getting. But there is a resistance, and it's growing on the streets, in the courts, and also people using the power of the boycott. But nonviolent actions have not ever changed their aim. It is righting the wrongs through peaceful means, but nonetheless resisting tyranny. In Unitarianism, L. Griswold Williams said that love is the doctrine of this church. But how do we manifest that love today? Where is that love? We must love ourselves. We must love our loved ones. We must love our friends. We must love our communities. And we must love our enemies. We don't like the actions they're taking, but they're humans. And should they become woke, and some of them will, some of them are in the process, we will need to welcome them home with open arms, not because we forgot what they did, but because we understand that the truth has brought them back. So it's in you, it's in me, it's in everyone in this room, it's in the people on Zoom. It's part of our beloved community, and our role is simply to be and share love. The us versus them mentality and assigning blame will not be useful. It will not be useful. Hatred, anger, and bitterness cannot save us. Our very survival depends on each other. We need universal peace and justice to be restored. Our weapons are our words, truth, unconditional love. Will this happen in our lifetime? This is the year of the snake, and this is a very drastic year because the snake sheds an old skin for a new one, and it may be very difficult, very, very difficult. But we must face the future with our courage, our convictions, and love. And while I'm not a Christian, I see that message of love as the underlying message of all. If we look at Corinthians 13, abridged, which states the following: I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love. I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, And if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give my body over to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I have gained nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. But now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. My closing prayer today is from a book. It's called Love at the Center, UU Theologies, and it's a collection of different UU ministers that the president of the American Unitarian Universalist Association has gathered, Sophia Betancourt. And she had this one poem that I read that really touched me to the core. It's written by Connie Goodbread. It's called My Prayer. And it says the following: May we, in this time of despair, find hope. May we, in this time of chaos, find clarity. May we, in this time of hatred, find love. May we, in this time of fear, find joy. Choosing joy is an act of defiance. Choosing love is an act of defiance. Choosing clarity is an act of defiance. Choosing hope is an act of loving defiance. May we know that love holds and surrounds us. May we know that we are part of a greater love. May we never succumb to the divisions meant to isolate us, oppress us, and leave us hostages. May we always draw the circle ever wider. May it be so. Me, I believe in the dream. I believe in a higher power. May we be sustained by the love in and around us, our beloved community, and our love for this wonderful planet, Earth. Let's make it so.